Okay, so what you're looking at is what used to be, you can see a little bit of the corner right there. It used to be called O'Hare Anthracite Speedway. We're in Brandonville, Pennsylvania, and this is the first stop on our journey through the region with some old abandoned racetracks that do not exist anymore, and we're just kind of peeking them out and seeing what they look like now.
Originally built in 1875, the original use of the course was for a trotting track for horses. With the boom of automobiles and automobile racing in America, the track was easily and quickly converted into an automobile racing facility, hosting events for early sprint cars, midgets, and even go-karts. The track operated in the late 1920s into the 1930s, and then again in the 1950s and 1960s. As the popularity of the Speedway died out, it was converted into a drive-in movie theater for a short period of time, before that evidently also disappeared. As it stands today, supposedly the straightaways are still visible by the packing down of dirt, not allowing grass to grow. Turns 3 and 4 also have the embankment still slightly visible through the trees and overgrowth.
So this is where Ringtown Speedway was. This is a farm, and on the other side of this fence is another small pasture, and that small pasture held a quarter-mile dirt track that was operated for micro sprints. This green barn backed right up to this dirt track, and there's not really a lot of information on this dirt track either, but it is there.
The course was very small, and in this picture you can see small grandstands on either end of the speedway. There isn't really a lot of information available about Ringtown Speedway online. Only a couple aerial photographs really show that it actually existed, but outside of those aerial photographs, there isn't a lot of documentation about it.
So here we are again in another place where there are things. We are at the location of what was once Sparky's Speedway. We're not directly on top of it, because where it was directly owned is now like a used car lot, so it's just full of used cars, owned by this place called Mike Watcher's Used Cars. It's near Pottsville, Pennsylvania. I'm not actually 100% sure what town we're even in, to be completely honest, but we're close to Minersville, Pottsville, that area, and we're sitting beside it now. But it was a baseball field-shaped track. This part we're sitting on right here was part of the property, but not part of the racetrack itself. The racetrack was like on the other side of this building. It was a very odd racetrack because part of the course was actually the entranceway to a church as well. But it was part of like the 1960s, 1970s scene of racing in Schuylkill County, and there's not an exact year of when it stopped being operated, but it was around late 60s into the 70s was when it stopped operating. But
my postscript for this one would be that we were in fact in the town of Minersville at the time, and also that the turn wasn't an entrance to a church, it was actually the entrance to a car wash. There was a church that owned property directly aside from the building.
So I'm finally out of the car, physically at an actual racetrack. This is Big Diamond in Schuylkill County itself, which is where we've spent the predominance of our day exploring these abandoned and forlorn racing facilities. Big Diamond is the only one that still has a racetrack in it, but it actually had two racetracks. There was a smaller racetrack, and they called it Little Diamond Speedway in 2013. They used the front and back stretch the same as the Big Diamond Speedway that's still there, that you can easily and readily available find information about. They cut in and had a really odd, almost like a square shape going on, even though the two corners were kind of turning the whole way. It was almost, you could look at it and think it was a square.
The track was 1/8 mile in length, and the reason that it had the 4 separated corners was because of the layout that they decided on to put it inside of the originally created 3/8 mile Big Diamond itself. The track only hosted 4 racing nights, and being on Thursday nights, it led to a quick demise of the speedway and the use of the Little Diamond itself. But the track's remains were left alone, so those who would go to the stands of a Big Diamond event would easily be able to see the outline and the banking of what was at one time that track. The Little Diamond only operated for the 2013 season as a micro-sprint racetrack, and even though Big Diamond is still operating as a racing facility, it's interesting to learn about the other efforts the track made and the differences in class and courses that make Little Diamond a unique piece of the region's dead racing opportunities.
Okay, so we're just on the outskirts of Tower City. Tower City is sort of the hub of our trip here because it's the place where there's a racetrack that actually there's some remnants of it left. Those pictures you see in this video are going to be this sweeping area, which I believe this was turn 1 into turn 2 over there.
As you'd have it, my bearings were off when we videotaped this portion of the video, and this was actually the entrance of turn 3 into turn 4.
And this guardrail is one of like the few pieces of it that you can still see that is left. But there's also along this whole way there are the stands where these pieces where they would put the guardrails and hang these bad boys off of they'd hang the guardrails off those. But so Goldmine Speedway was operated and closed twice. It first was opened in 1950. And it stayed open for only 3 seasons or so, and then it was closed, but then in 1962 it was reopened until 1968. So Goldmine was a quarter-mile track around this area that we're standing in, and it mostly ran like sportsmen's and hobby stocks, just kind of dudes with cars, and they wanted to go racing with them. In the early days of the Speedway, it was very primitive, so everything was sort of built out of wood, and it was just backwoods when it first came out, and then obviously they renovated it to have actual guardrails at some point in its tenure as a speedway. But this was kind of the main pull of our trip. You can come with me.
Yeah.
This was kind of the main pull of our trip because it's still kind of a passion. Obviously, we're doing this in the wintertime, so it's all snowed over, which is really great. It does help with the trees, that you can see through the trees because they don't have leaves on them, but it's what's like left is very significant because you can see the banking. This is still a portion of the banking on my right over here. You can see all the tracks of various animals that come through. During the summertime, it is said that people come over here and ride around with four-wheelers and dirt wheat bikes and stuff like that, walk their dogs and whatnot. It would be very serene and peaceful to be the only ones out here instead of having some bozo talking about the history of the Speedway. But Goldmine Speedway, this was one of the first places where they just kind of had like weekly Saturday night races where you could bring your whatever car you had and throw a motor in it and put a roll cage in it and go racing. So it was pretty significant to incorporate racing into the culture of the area. So this is where I've decided spontaneously that I'd like to film the outro of this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned some stuff about the history of racing and racetracks in the general Schuylkill County area of Pennsylvania. There's a lot going on, so we're looking down the backstretch of Goldmine at the end of this video. Let me know what you thought. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If there's anything that's wrong or you have to expand on, I would be more than happy to hear it. We're very interested in the history of motorsport around this neck of the woods. So thank you to Trey, my cameraman and partner in crime, for this endeavor. We got to go see a lot of cool stuff in his neck of the woods, more so than mine, but still really cool. And I wouldn't recommend doing this because you can trespass and you can get kind of stuck in the mud and snow sometimes. That happened once during this trip. We got stuck in the mud, but we got out and we got to Goldmine. So thanks, Trey. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Stretch as the big track, which you can't really see because obviously we picked the greatest day of all to do this, would be where there's snow on everything, but away from the wind.
Yep, you're good.
I'm gonna let this car through. Come on by, mister. So,
Whatever. You'll have to cut a bit.
what town are we in?
Shit. We're 5 minutes.
Minersville.
We're-
No.
You're in frame.
Oh.
Hello there.
Do you want me to get out of the fucking hill?
It is a hill. There's no denying that.